At Collegiate Sports Advocate, we're more than recruiting. We're about the right fit. Our mission, to guide student athletes through the entire journey from the first conversation all the way to graduation. Because it's not just about signing day. It's about building a successful career. Our advocates have lived it, played in college, coached in college, or walked this road with other athletes. What sets us apart? Relationships with college coaches, with families, with you. Collegiate Sports Advocate, your future, your fit, your success.
So I'll go ahead and introduce you, Cheri Naudin. You are the owner and founder of Collegiate Sports Advocate, which is much more than a recruiting service. There's a lot of recruiting services out there, but CSA. If you guys want to go on social media, pull up CSA. I think you're going to find some good information. You can contact me if you want to get a hold of Cheri. Also, Cheri just employed me to be the national director of football with CSA, and I'm really excited about it. So I just want to make sure everybody knows, because I know, our audience tends to be a little bit more football focused, and like we talked about, for the longest time, I was against recruiting services, but a lot have changed in the landscape of college athletics with NILs and with the transfer portal. And so, yeah, tell us exactly. Give us a backstory of Collegiate Sports Advocate. Tell us about you, and tell us what your vision is for CSA.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. So it is a long story, because I have been in the sport of sports for many, many years, my whole life. I myself ran AAU track. My dad was a football player at the University of Arizona. We grew up in the 70s, believing that, athletes are athletes, and you have to be an athlete, and you have to be able to run and be a great athlete. Well, I fell in love with the game of softball early in my years, and previous to Title IX. So we never had the dream to go play in college. And
Right.
then I had three kids. My son, Nick, played with the likes of Nolan Arenado. He was a great baseball player, just never had that grit and gut, to want to play it at the next level. Not to mention, we didn't know how to get him there, right? And that was my first key learning, that the responsibility of recruiting is on the family and the individual. Then my middle daughter is Shannon Naudin Billings. She's the head coach at Maryville softball. She won 3 national titles, played in the Big 12 for Kansas, went to regionals twice, played Team Mexico. I mean, just had this amazing experience. And now, being a mentor and a head coach to many others. Our youngest one, which she'll love to hear this on video, we always thought she was our best athlete. She could literally play any sport. She picked up a tennis racket and in a week, won a singles tournament in high school. But she ended up playing club soccer and was very talented. Won a title ring with Central Arkansas with the soccer, and then went on to Baylor Law School. She's a litigation attorney for NIL and Title IX. In fact, she was in a Dallas courtroom this morning. So this is what we call the family business. We created it as a family because we have so much to give back. My husband is a head coach of 7 teams for the Hot Shots organization, which is a very notable high performing travel club based in the state of Texas. My son is also a travel ball coach now. That's their second jobs. They're all gainfully employed in corporate America. And then again, this is what I do. So I founded it in 2015, literally on the backs of other recruiting services. Like, what are we doing? They just take the money and you go in a portal, and you might have a little software program that might shoot out to college coaches, but that's not recruiting. And I really took my experience from 28 years of corporate America and said, let's follow a model of who, what, where, when, why, and how, and do what's in the best interest of the student athlete. Then everybody wins. But it's not a big money maker, right? We're not out there accepting anybody that'll come to our website,
Right.
log on and pay, and then, you get the benefits, because we are so tailored to the individual needs. And I'll give the last point and then let you ask me all kinds of questions.
Yeah.
Is we decided 10 years ago to stay with the student athlete until they graduated college, because it is tough. The herd gets thinned as they get to the top. They quit, they get injured. There's all kinds of things that happen along the way. So we have always done that. And lo and behold, here comes the portal. And now we're kind of the answer to everybody, because now how do you navigate the system of wanting to be a student athlete?
Right. And so, I mean, I was going to ask you about what separates Collegiate Sports Advocate from the other big recruiting services and even small recruiting services. Because, and again, we've talked about this, but what I've noticed recently is that every trainer in America, every anybody that wants to be involved in sports, and I'm not talking coaches, I'm talking about, and there are some coaches out there, but everybody's a recruiting specialist,
Mm-hmm.
which means that they're contacting coaches. And you know as well as I do that when it comes to college coaches in all sports, um, first of all, they can find people on their own. But once there's hidden gems all over the place, depending on the sport. And the other thing is it's really, and I think, tell us how you focus on this. It's about anybody, whether it's a high school coach, a club coach, or a recruiting service. It's about their reputation to evaluate the athlete individually on the field as well as off the field. And then it's also about their reputation with college coaches. So tell us a little bit about why that separates Collegiate Sports Advocate and why it's so important to have that kind of a relationship.
100%. One of the things, as I've always said, and this is my shirt I wear, it says it's personal in honor of Deion Sanders, yes, but it really is a personal passion, and I think it does come down to the core fundamental of doing what's in the best interest of the student athlete. You have to take each one of these student athletes through the process of understanding their talent, their academics, their cultural beliefs, their regional fit. There's all kinds of things. So we have a part of our process is a decision grid. And we really take them through it as they're getting opportunities so that they understand what the fit is. They know what they're getting into. The coaches are allowed to give us feedback in the process. And then over time, I mean, it's 10 years now. I coach some young ladies that are now coaches at San Diego and Oregon. And so you have those kind of relationships being in the sport for 30 years. I can call them and say, hey, will you take a look at this kid? I don't personally ever try to sell a kid. I won't even tell them metrics unless they were provided by a reputable company, because what they don't want is for you to call, hey coach, I got a kid that can play for you and here's her metrics. They don't want that. Is she fast? Is she fast enough? What team is she on? What talent layer is she? Where does she play next? Our whole goal is to get the college coach to see them play. And honestly, Corbin, I even fight this on social media today. This constant barrage of endless skill video, and look at me lifting weights, and look at me jumping through the ladders, and oh, I'm working out and throwing pitch in the tunnel. All of that's well and good, but it doesn't need to be on social media. It usually, it, I call it, exposes you negatively instead of giving you exposure. And so we've really found that way to use our relationships. I've got a brand new student athlete. I call and say, hey, tell me what you thought about that kid at the camp. Am I in the right lane? Do I need to pivot? Where do you think this kid can play, coach? That's how we do it. And then you build that trusting relationship. They want to call you. And I had a long conversation with a coach today. And when they go to a new school, I always go, winning, we're still winning, because now we have another school in our portfolio that we can call and engage with. And, our logo is pretty reputable around the country. We're clearly number one in the softball world. There's not a coach that doesn't know us or can't connect with us, via one version of separation, but it is the quality of work we've done. Our reputation is hardworking, first on the streets. We outwork anybody. In fact, it's a joke like, who's my competition? I'm still trying to figure out who my competition is, because
Right.
we really get it done. That model then works in something like football, because like you said, there's a million of them out there.
Yeah.
But with somebody like you with a reputation and relationships and contacts to be able to have them pick up the phone and take a phone call from you. That's why it works. Because like you said, they can go get a football player. There's 100 on every school. I'm based in Texas. There's 100 at every school in the whole state of Texas. They could go find a kid, but they
Yeah.
want a trusted resource who's, not going to add lifts in their shoes to make them look taller. I mean, come on. We all know those games, right?
Yeah. Well, I think, and there is a difference, but it's much the same, right? There's a correlation between all the sports when it comes to recruiting. So, for instance, in football, it's not because there's not club and coaches, college coaches don't recruit out of club or 7-on-7s or stuff like that. Um, they go straight to the high school, right? Unlike a lot of other sports. But the difference with football is there are 780, that's 80, almost 800 4-year institutions in this country that play football. 800 schools that play football. Whereas with the other sports, soccer, softball, baseball, basketball, all those sports, even wrestling, and I know I missed a lot. Volleyball is another one. The difference is, yeah, they go to club. They can recruit off the high school and the club, but you're talking about 105 total scholarships for a Division One football program compared to how many for softball, right?
Yeah,
It's a
they're
lot
capped
less.
now at they're capped now at 25, so there is less on the roster, but there's also more schools. There's about 1,500 nationwide in all conferences.
Good, good. You talked about the vetting process of potential athletes because that's a lot different too, right? Most recruiting services are going to take on everybody and anybody just to hit their bottom line. And, I'm not speaking poorly about the other, but we just do it differently. So
Yeah.
the vetting process, why is that important and how do you go about just not specific, we don't want to give away our secrets, but why is that so important?
I think it starts with a foundation of who's gonna make it. If you look at the 1% kid that makes it in college, like I had a young man enter my office when I was a sales manager in cellular, and he comes in, you could tell he was a football player. I didn't even have kids yet, wasn't even in the sport of sport. And I said, son, sit down. I can teach you to sell cell phones, but I can't teach you to be a quality human and have those quality life experiences under your belt. So that's the passion I have behind the sport and getting kids to play sport. But how that transcends down is not everybody can be a 1%er. Not
Right.
everybody can work to that rate level. And I see USA players and big names, athletes in softball get up on TikTok and you can go to college if you want to. I believe in you. I use the equation like, oh, let's dress up our kids in their cute little ball gowns and put a crown on them and take them to Disneyland, and they too can be a princess when they grow up. It's just not reality of the business anymore. The business says it's elite of elite, so you have to have elite communication. You have to have elite time management. You have to have elite workout. I call it the grind. You have to have elite grind. That has to be right here. You can't teach that. They have to develop that or have that innately in their soul.
Yeah. And you said business, which isn't interesting to me, but it used to be when I got out of school in the 90s and then when I started coaching, at Missouri in the 90s, it still wasn't a business. It was still about mentoring kids, young adults, because 18 through 22, preparing them for life in general,
Right.
right? And the biggest thing was making sure that they graduated. And that has all flipped. Not that those things are important, and not that that is still a focus of, I think, 80% of the coaches that coach at the collegiate level. But the difference is it is now a business, and it comes down to winning,
Yep.
right? Because winning equals dollars. And with NIL, I mean, everybody's after dollars.
Right.
So I'm glad you said business, and you probably didn't even realize I was going to go that direction.
Yeah, I didn't. So I didn't mean to cue you, but I
No.
really, I see the business change. My husband's a strategy guy, has always had a vision for 5 years down the road in corporate America. And he said 10 years ago, he said, we're going to be just like baseball,
Mhm.
but the money is going to creep in. And once football went to the NIL, and of course, my daughter being a litigation Title IX attorney, I mean, you start to see the implications of the big cavity that's being built in the sport. Because I still believe, again, being pre Title IX myself, the value of females getting an education and actually being a student athlete. They are the corporate America leaders. They are people, in the courtrooms, in the law offices, in the medical rooms that are the elite one percenters in their trade. And so I still believe that it is an amazing experience, amazing opportunity, but for the very few. I don't think everybody's going to play the game, clearly not going to play the game in college. And in our sport, 0.03 will actually play in the elite Power Four conference version of the game, and still only 9 play on the field. So the
Yeah.
numbers have really, really, lowered down.
Yeah. What, because I used to talk about this and having been there, and you and I have spoken about this, but because recruiting has changed so much and because that trickle down effect is really taken hold, and because everybody's using the transfer portal as a recruiting device, the main one instead of high schools. When you take on, let's say you take on a softball player from XYZ high school, what is your interaction? What is collegiate sports advocate and the advocates that work with specific sports? What is their interaction with the high school or the club coach once they have take on one of their athletes?
Well, it's 100% our desire to be a valuable resource and being still pushing up that student athlete underneath their tutelage, because we're not coaching them. You and
No.
I both have coaching backgrounds. We can provide lots of tips and techniques, but we're not literally out there on the field doing the game. So it's got to be a partnership. I said it last night to a family, all hands on deck, everybody, let's go. It's got to be the trainers. It's got to be the club and the high school. And there's a big divide on the female side about high school. Like, I go to the coaches conference, the NFCA. It's going to be in Vegas this year in December. And they literally have to separate the rooms, because you cannot have a conversation about the travel coaches versus the high school coaches and who's more valuable. It's very contentious. And yet their passion is all in it for the kids. But I always say there's 1% of the travel teams that are really good, and there's 1% of the high school teams that are really good. But they
Right.
all have this energy against each other instead of helping each other be maybe the 2 or 3%. And I don't know that human nature, we will ever get there, but I believe in it and keep, fighting for it. But if this is our model, we all do what's in the best interest of the student athlete, everybody wins. High school, trainer, mental coach. I mean, there's all kinds of people on deck now, the family, the school, everybody wins. But we get so focused around the brand and the coach's name and their reputation. And, the travel ball clubs have gotten real contentious about, well, we talk to the coach, not you. I don't care who talks to the coach. Really, I
Right.
just care that this kid is getting in their hands.
This episode of More Than the Scoreboard is brought to you by the Danny Mahan Foundation. Founded by Terry and Annette Mahan, the foundation exists to shine a light on the opioid crisis impacting families across our nation. Their son, Danny, tragically passed away on January 3rd, 2019 from fentanyl. To learn more or to support their mission, visit www.dannymahanfoundation.org. Every donation goes directly toward non-medical care for addiction centers and rehab facilities, helping those in the fight for recovery.
Yeah. What, the mentorship, which I think a word that we use, and as advocates, I think that's really the key word compared to a recruiting coach or recruiting specialist or
We get
something.
offended when you call us a recruiter, because we're
I mean,
so much more than that.
well, but, and we both know that a recruiter is a college coach. And it was always funny to me when I'd have parents and be like, oh, this recruiter contacted. I'm like, from what school? And it was hard for them to answer. And I had to explain, like, in the sport of football, the people that recruit are your coaches at that school. So if you take BYU, you got 10 full-time coaches, with the head coach included. Every coach on that staff has their own recruiting area.
Right.
And so they contact the coaches and the athletes and the parents. And so you have the recruiting coach, and you have the coordinator, then you have the head coach. And so we know, and that's why, when people say, oh, you're a recruiter. No,
Yeah.
I'm not recruiting for corporate America. I'm not trying to take you and put you here. We're just the middlemen, the advocates, the mentors. When it comes to mentorship, how is CSA a little bit different? And again, Cheri, not talking about getting into super depth detail to share with everyone and everybody out there, but
Sure.
what
And
do
I
you
don't
really
mind
think?
sharing.
Yeah,
That we call it the system, and it's really built on three fundamental pillars: time management, communication skills, and accountability. And then all of the services that we provide interlink those foundational pillars. And we have a weekly touch point with our student athletes, and sometimes it may be minimal, but we have purpose behind it. We do all kinds of learning techniques about setting goals and different lifting schemes and accomplishing their specific metric goals. We're not the trainer, but we're helping them stay on track and developing those goals in order to be a better recruit and overcoming their academic challenges and their testing challenges. We really go full circle of finding out what it is the student athlete needs in order to be a one percenter. And you're not going to find that on a travel ball team. And again, I'm married to one, but their job is to make a team and create an environment in which you are coachable and coached up to be able to play in college. If you don't know the game and the football coaches aren't teaching the game on the field, they're going to skip on it. They're going to go find some other talented kid that has better foundation, right?
right. And I think it's important for parents that are listening, and even kids, and even the high school coach. I mean, um, if I'm a football coach and I don't want to be my expertise is the game of football. So if I want to get the kids bigger, stronger, faster, yeah, I may know enough to be able to do that, but that's not my specialty. So what are we going to do? We're going to go hire a strength coach,
Right.
and he's going to put together the strength and conditioning program because that's his expertise. With recruiting, coaches will help their athletes. Not saying they won't. The difference is how much time does a coach have, who most of them are teachers or have outside jobs. How much time do they have to send out? Because we're talking 1,000 schools out there.
Yeah.
You can wait for a coach to contact you, which is a lot how it happens, but every kid can play at the next level. It just depends on where.
Well,
If
and you're
he or she really wants to.
and I talk about that. I'm not sure they can anymore because there's just too many kids desiring to play the game without, an advocate or a leader getting them there, right? So if they think that they are somebody that can still play the game, then they need help because
Yeah,
organically going through the process is very, very difficult in today's world. And what I've always said is it is the parents' responsibility to hire the right people to make sure that their student athlete makes it. What's happening now in our sport and in baseball, and again, we do all sports, is the parents are getting real upset and they point the finger at the coach and they say, "You didn't get my kid committed. And you're talking about somebody else on the team instead of my, darling daughter." And so they quit your team and they go someplace else and they go someplace else and they keep forgetting that wherever they go with themselves. It's a them thing, not a coach thing or an advocate thing, or they like to look for blame. And in our contract we're very specific about the student athletes connectivity and doing the right things at the right time, because the talent layer will be selected by the college coach, not by what their travel coach does or their high school coach does or what their advocate does for them. It is ultimately they pick you, and then you get a choice of where you're going to go.
yeah, and I think, and that's perfect because that's what I was getting at, and I think from a mindset standpoint of most coaches, right, and parents need to listen to this, is that coaches are designed when it comes to kids playing at the next level to evaluate their talent, evaluate their size, their speed. All those things come into play, right? And their aptitude for knowing the sport. And so, as a high school coach, and I'm specifically talking football, but it's no different in any sport. If you have a couple kids that are like at this level, and the rest of your team is right here, but those kids are just a little bit different, then you're going to focus on those kids because you know as a coach that they can play at the next level. It's the kids in the mid range that there's half those kids don't want to play after high school, and half those kids do want to play and do have enough talent to play somewhere. The
Right.
kids at the bottom, even if they want to play college, my experiences are aware enough to know that I can't play in college.
Right.
I'm not going to put in that work to do that. So we are here to focus on all the kids. But when it comes to helping, parents need to understand that these high school coaches, like 1,000 schools in the sport of football, times between 100 and 200 kids, of which, anywhere from 20 to 50 are seniors. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And not that they're not willing to do it, but there comes to play the time aspect.
Right.
So that's why we're here. That's why you
100%.
created. Yeah.
Yep.
That's why you
going
founded.
strong. In fact, we hit a milestone yesterday. We hit 1,200 student athletes. We're about to hit 700 committed. And the fallout between that is the active student athletes and then what we call the quitters. We're not happy about quitters, but they're kids and families that aren't willing to finish the grind. But the worst one is injuries. The injuries will sideline a kid sometimes permanently.
Yeah. And you kind of hit on it, but what we also do is focus on grades, right? Kids are, like you said, kids are a weekly check-in. We make them responsible, much like parents, for communicating with us, for taking the initiative, for being proactive, along with, we're going to keep up with the grades. We're going to teach you how to use, you mentioned it, social media in the communication aspect. We're also going to teach the parents because they're super important in that. And, outside things of sports that they can be doing to really help their marketable ability to contribute to a college program, because that's big too.
Yeah. And something there on the parents, and I wish I had learned it. My daughter came home from playing at Kansas, kind of getting in our faces about how we were fueling them. Like, we don't talk about weight to females. We weren't fueling them properly. My husband's Hispanic. We ate a lot of tamales and enchiladas and a lot of beans and rice. And both my athletes came home saying, "Mom, we're just not being, fed correctly in order to be athletes." And so we actually have just a general presentation in our contract or in our resources available to our student athletes about eating a proper meal. And honestly, it starts at home. We're the ones that buy the food. We're the ones that set up the menu. And yeah, they can drive through a fast food place, but we've got to teach them what an athletic diet is. And I am not a licensed nutrition, but we've got a lot of people we can refer to that will get with you. But it's so important. We're not fueling them, and yet they're running their laps and doing their drills and doing speed and agility, but they're going in circles because the fueling isn't working.
Yeah. Talk about the resources on the website. When an athlete signs up, they have access to a lot of different resources, correct?
Yes. And we did that. We call it a wiki. One of our moms actually said, "Hey, Cheri, you need a wiki." And I'm like, "What's a wiki?" And she's like, "Hey, it's a library of documents and resources available to the student athletes." So, and we also do a lot of recorded videos. So people come in, our time management is on recording. Our social media training is on a recording. We try to put things like we have seasonal recordings. We have one fall training and camping coming up this Sunday. We record it and keep it, but we have a lot of those resources always available to the student athlete. But the engagement and the relationship and being able to communicate with our athletes and continuing. I got a text from a young lady going to college in Canada today, just giving us an update and, just telling us, "Hey, it's pretty tough up here, but I'm doing great. Don't worry about me." And, that's really important because when they struggle, they need somebody to be able to outreach to. And it's not always your college coach. It's not always mom and dad. They don't want to hear what trouble you just got in, but they reach out to us as long as we've developed that relationship. And I think that's the best you can get out of us is the relationship, the knowledge, the sense of the business, and helping them understand how to graduate with that cap and gown.
Yeah. And and I think that's the difference. I always, when it comes to collegiate sports advocate, one of the things that I noticed first off is different is, and it was an approach that I took while coaching. Like if you're the head coach, you speak a certain language if you're trying to teach them something, and it's one way. Then you have to evaluate and analyze the reaction of 100 players. And if 50 of them understand and 50 of them don't, you have to repeat yourself in a different way.
Right.
And then it continues to get smaller and smaller until everybody knows it. But CSA does the same thing in the sense that everything you do is specialized for that individual and their situation. It's not this blanket or this umbrella, solution or methodology. It is specifically tailored for each individual athlete.
Yeah, and I kind of mock this on TikTok. I make funnies about people with all their free information and their books that they wrote, because they were a college coach 20 years ago. Those are all great resources, but they only go so far.
Mm-hmm.
I always say free has no value. Free, it lands on your doorstep. You do with it the best you can. But the problem for the family or the student athlete trying to pivot themselves is they come from it from an emotional perspective. How much content can I throw out on social media? When the sky is not, there's not college coaches sitting there looking for the kids, pumping up the bullets in the sky, hoping for them to land. And I apologize for my Texas analogy, but we call it the shotgun approach, right?
Right.
They just go out and put everything and hope that some coach is sitting at their desk going to find them. And I'm not saying they can't get recruited that way, but it's such a long way to figure out maybe you weren't fishing in the right pond, or evaluating yourself appropriately. And then again, I was a parent for three athletes. The hardest thing is understanding your own student athlete from what you want and what they want and where they can play and get the right experience. They just aren't privy to that information. It's almost like our rosy glasses as parents. We just can't see through it. So that's one of the that advantages that you and I have in our sport, and having so many years of experiences. You can look at a football player, you can evaluate his talent and where people like him have gone before, and his exceptional God-given talent will work over here, and kindly guide them towards that place where they will have their dreams come true.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the other thing when parents are looking at you got to understand that pretty much all of our advocates are parents. I know for a fact three kids, me, three kids, all went through the recruiting process, all played. And you're exactly right. That's one thing I think as a father I've prided myself on is, even though I may see their full potential and know their full potential, and like a college coach, I also know, because I'm a coach, the different levels and where you can play. I mean, when I was played at USC in Iowa, and I think the tallest lineman we had was Tony Baselli at USC, and he was, at the time, he was, I think, 6'5",
Right.
maybe 6'6", but most of our guys were 6'2". We had some 6'1s, we had some 6'3s, but most of the guys were 6'2", 6'3". Nowadays, with offensive linemen, if you go to a college program, find a guy that's under 6'5", and he's
Right.
lucky to be on that roster. And so you may have a kid that's 6'3", that's just a beast on the line. And because he's 6'3", there's only going to be select schools that take him,
Right.
and so you have to know that as a parent. And that's another thing that we're going to educate the parents on and continuously work on, and that kind of thing.
And you
One of my
actually hit a
last
good point there. I was going to say the parents, we spend more time guiding the parents and helping them understand the layering and understanding the silence of, in our sport, there's an opening recruiting day of September 1st of junior year. And, 1%, the 0.03 will actually get those opportunities on day one, but 1.5 in total will ever play Division One. So I
Yeah.
take the chance to kind of pivot them at that point and say, let's talk about Division Two, because they're in that same timeline. And if we're not targeting all of them, they're picking somebody that picks them.
How has, and then I got one more question after this, but how has the transfer portal affected high school athletes in all sports?
Okay. Yeah, I would tell you just the numbers are mind blowing. I would start with COVID. COVID gave a fifth year, which I personally felt was very unnecessary. They could have given 1 year back and it would have been great, but they gave a fifth year to all 4 years in college. So for 5 years, we've been top heavy with a fifth year athlete sitting on top of, a 22, 23-year old competing with a 17-year-old or an 18-year-old. So then we started loading up the junior colleges a little bit better. The junior colleges, just like baseball, became very valuable. You can teach and train and develop, and you've got 2 years of general ed, and then they're more valuable when they come in as a junior. So then that kept the top heavy. Well, ours this last graduation class, got a good couple hundred off our books, and now you can kind of see through it. What used to be eight, on the average, eight new student athletes for each division, and especially the higher level ones, the Power Four conference and Power Five coming in for us in spring. They used to take 6 to 8 new student athletes every year. They're picking maybe a pitcher and a catcher and a shortstop that they can't let go by. They're
Yeah.
waiting to spend their spend in summer, which is now when they're all seniors and they're starting to panic. And then the layering happens really, really fast. And then what we're sitting on in fall is the first time ever with, a double digit number of student athletes in both baseball and softball uncommitted. I've got one volleyball and one soccer uncommitted. And somebody gave me an analogy. It's like having an opening at a job in a tight job market, right? And there's one opening, and all of a sudden your candidates are people that could do anybody's job at your company. The candidate pool gets so rich, but there's only one job opening.
Yeah.
So I think what we're trying to get the message to on the 27th is find your fit quickly. And then
Yeah.
the 28th, we're saying, listen, get involved, stop spending your money going to camps where you want to go, and start to put yourself in a place where you understand your talent level.
Amen to that. Well, that's perfect. All right. I'm going to put you on the spot because I know you mentioned it, but with our athletes, we focus a lot on SMART goals. And which is cool because I used to do that with every semester I
It
would
sounds
make.
so logical, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, not just our football players, but the students in my classes, we would always do SMART goals. We do them 4 times a year, once at the beginning of semester, once in the middle of semester, and the 2 semesters. So we always knew where we were at. But we first had to explain what the acronym SMART meant. So I'm gonna put you on the spot. What is your goal with Collegiate Sports Advocate? What's your 5 year goal? What's your intermediate goal? I call that 3 to 5 years intermediate. That's what I
Yeah,
call it.
I love it. I am a business plan writer, so it's always, in the hundreds per class. Our
Right.
biggest class was ever 144. It's hard to have more than that when we're so specialized. So again, we're not going out there and blowing the millions of student athletes into our portal, being very specific, but continuing our hit rate. We are 100% if people stay with us. That
Yeah.
what's happening now is the injuries and the quitting, but if they stay with us and take it to the finish line, they will get recruited if they listen, learn, participate, and engage in our key learnings. But that's to me the biggest disappointment. So I don't like that. I call that churn from the industry I came from. We don't like churn. We don't like turnover. We don't like quitting because you don't need to quit. You've quit an elite process. And, to me, I always say that's starting a bad habit of quitting when
Right.
it gets too tough or you don't get what you want. And then, always growing my staff. But again, I like my arms around it because I am a sole proprietor. I have a family of people that help me with my business, but I don't think there can be too many of us to do a great job. At one point, I had double digit advocates, but it was more to manage them and manage, the outcome than it is to have very select, very direct people that
Yes.
are similar in mindset.
Yeah. All right. You got the floor. Anything else you want to share? Any information I didn't hit that you can think of? Anything you want people to know?
And maybe
Athletes.
you can clip this up a little bit, but the biggest challenge for us in recruiting is people thinking the spend is not worth it. And a client the other day said, well, heck, that's 4 camps, and I would have gotten more choices out of you, and I would have had a better destination and would have learned sooner and not made mistakes. We like them when they come in early, 8th grade, 9th grade, especially the boys, 9th grade, man. They got to get in. They got to get their discipline put together. They got to get everything fine tuned. But the females, 8th and 9th grade. And getting them in means we're evaluating them in the journey. We're helping them grow and develop without the pressure. But being able to do that early and overcome the obstacle of people thinking that it's easy to do it themselves. There's a lot of emotional excitement when they think they're in charge of the destiny. But man, when it fails hard and it's on the back of your kid. So I would love to find a way to overcome that and continue to sell the value of why it's important to have a service like us. And I don't believe there's another one out there that does what we do.
There's
And
not.
then, overcoming the pushback and the bridge between the travel coaches. I mean, it's gotten more and more contentious. They want to be the only one to talk on behalf of the student athlete, and their strategy is the only way. And boy, that's the first time I had this happen twice this year. And it's just little dividing lines. It's competition. It's jealousy. It's ego. It's all of those things. But I'm just like, surrender your angst of being needing to be the one. Why don't we all be the one to help this student athlete
Right.
become their best self?
Yes. Okay. You're awesome. That's great.
Thank you. That was
Well,
fun.
hey, I really, really appreciate you, Cheri, and thank you for bringing me on, and thanks for everything
Oh my
that you're
gosh,
doing.
I'm ready. I want to get you more. So again,
Yeah, we
keep
will.
driving me. I'll be
We will.
driving actually out to see my mom, which is a 4-hour drive each way tomorrow. So if you got brainstorming time and you want
I do.
to do things, I'll be available. So
I will. Okay. Hey, hang on just a second. I'm going to stop the
okay.
recording.